As the goal, I think most people just want enough and want dignity and want to have friends they can count on. And no amount of money or success will get you friends you can count on. Like, all that can do that is character.
Right.
And you're going to have to edit this so heavily.
Starting now, we have one of my Mount Rushmore songwriters joining us today. Something's always right for me whenever this man is having his music playing or I'm at a show. All I wanted this holiday season was to get together for this New Year chat, this interview. And I'm so glad to have him with us and his music with us in our world, whether we're walking on the ocean or shooting off to new constellations and everywhere in between. In this moment, this Barefoot Quartet has been with me for decades. It's just been a real solid point in my life. Glen Phillips joins us today. He'll be at Novato's Hot Monk Novato Session Room, April 14th. Tickets available at ctickets.us. Happy New Year, Glen. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good. You have other Santa Barbara homeboys there behind you. Is the Atari's poster always there, or is that special for?
No, it's always there. This is my recording studio, and my albums happen here. And Zoom happened here for a year of teaching too. So this is the creative space. I love those guys, and I feel like I neglected the Central Coast area. I went to Solvang with my family over the holidays for a couple of nights, and realized I had never really spent any time in Santa Ynez, Santa Maria. Went to Gaviota Beach, and just like, wow, I lived in Orange County for 7 years and never came into that region too often. You come from a beautiful part of our state.
It's pretty lovely out here.
Yeah, it's a great place. So I've been teaching economics, government, and for the first time, African American studies this year. We last talked in 12 years ago when I was the general manager of Titan Radio at Cal State Fullerton. And I asked my students, we've been analyzing some music and lyrics. So we did Hold On last class, and today we did Starting Now. My student, McCade, wanted to ask you this question, so I carried it with you from his worksheets today. He wanted to know, what's something this year in 2022 that you're trying to start now, and something new that maybe a path that you're on, or if there's something you're thinking about this year?
I think, the primary thing for me is kind of just actually appreciating what's straight in front of me. I have a lot of habits of being on to the next thing, or even just being distracted all the time. Swipey things. And, more than that, this is the bane of the last decade of my life is overconnectedness and the ability to add too much noise to any given moment. And so being more present and being more grateful when I'm more present, instead of kind of spinning off into the future or regretting the past. So it's probably more than anything that's the goal.
That seems like a great goal. I know I'm doing my best teaching when there's some thoughtful planning and maybe a meaningful end, and the beginning is getting us to the end. But when there's time for calm and reflection of the things I'm teaching during the lesson, to pause and let the silence happening, almost like the Barbara Walters method of interviewing, where she'll ask a short question and leave a lot of silence after the response is given, because then the speaker may come up with more or fill that silence. And I love when they take me in a direction that I haven't planned. That's the most beautiful part, I think, because that's what makes the unique students in the room with me special. The billion to one chance we'd all be together, the sacrifices all of our ancestors made getting us there to that room, whether we take it for granted or not. Those real moments are the best. I feel like those are very important. So trying to do more of that in my teaching this year too.
Yeah, and in general, I think with anything, certainly with creative work, you can have an idea of what your inspiration is that you're starting from, but you may end up, if you're not paying attention, you may do a so-so job of the thing you intended, or you may do a really good job of something that you never saw coming. And, I'll often start writing something and think I'm heading in a certain direction, and then a line or just something will come along that feels way more authentic than the thing I was trying to impose. And that's where the actual song is. That's where the actual creation is. Every once in a while, I write the song I think I was going to write, but for the most part, I don't.
Yeah, I feel that way, that maybe 3 of 100 songs that I've written are intentionally thematic and follow and finish in the way that I thought they'd start. And the rest, I feel like, are writing through me. They're like channeling and developing from the line that just came, then is a new path to go somewhere new.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things about your music is your ability to lyrically zoom out and write something that could be interpreted dozens of ways. And we were listening to Hold On in class, and students in 6 classes thought very different things about what you were talking about because you didn't explicitly say, right? You didn't explicitly name events and feelings and times. And I thought that was so cool that people then own it and reflect on it. And whenever they think about it, they think about it that way. Since the time that you wrote it, over months, has it take has it taken new meaning yet every time you play it? When you just finished a great tour and the album is beautiful, congratulations. Does it mean, how quickly do things evolve when you're playing them to when you're thinking of different things when you're performing them?
Yeah, I mean, I try to write from a center of emotional truth more than situational truth, if that makes sense. So the plot's not the thing, right? It's the combination of feelings, and usually it's a sense of ambivalence, and ambivalence gets misused. I think when people it gets misused in a way where people think ambivalence means not really caring about something, but ambivalence means that you have tension between your feelings. Like something makes you really happy and really afraid, or um, and so this song in particular, a fair amount of the songs on the album, some of them started off being more topical about 2020 because there was so much happening at that time, and um, starting now, I actually wrote in 1919. So it was before things got really weird, but they were already really weird. And
Mm.
I mean, the thing is, they're always really weird. and um, depending on what your center of focus is, right? If your center of focus is on living a comfortable middle class existence, being white and male in the United States, it doesn't mean you don't have valid feelings, but it's one of the more comfortable positions from which to view the world. Uh, and uh, almost everybody throughout history has had a vantage point of, or at least since people started writing history down, which is also, I would say, maybe concurrent with some of when they started getting really good at oppressing each other. Uh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's often something in the background that's not working, or something in the foreground that's not working, and um, just the starting, I need a little bit of hope, one ray of light, just enough peace to get me through the night.
Yeah.
It's like you can make that about anything. Uh,
Anything.
and it's just about the strength to wake up. And, you know, I my interpretation of most major spiritual teachings is that um, whether it's, the kingdom of heaven is within you or before you, depending on your translation, or whether it's, Buddhism calling you into, mindfulness, and, Thich Nhat Hanh talking about dwelling in the present moment. This is the only moment, right? That there's those, all these practices are about waking up right now as much as you're able to, and then doing it again in the next moment and doing it again in the next moment. Uh, it's not something you get one and done and you're fixed and it's over, right? Um, I have my yoga teacher in town who I love always says practice makes practice. Uh, it's it's not something you do and then you're there and then you're finished. And so, um, going back to goals, lifelong learning, lifelong curiosity, lifelong interest. And I think there's something in our culture that uh, kind of sells an idea that if you've acquired a certain amount of either money or education or property or status, that you're done. And then you get to kind of shut off and enjoy it.
Right.
And older, wiser practices tend to say that regardless of what you have, it's your state of mind in any given moment. And that you can practice presence in moments that are maybe more comfortable instead of going to sleep in those moments. And then you'll have a better strength, like a core strength around presence in times when things get really difficult, because inevitably they will, right? So that was a long answer. But
I
so
loved it.
that song in some ways has applied itself well. You know, and even things, if you want to think, you know, there's the we're all afraid, we're all unsure, there's no waving of a wand, no miracle cure.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that can apply if you want it. That can apply to the pandemic. That
Hmm.
can apply to institutionalized racism.
Yeah.
That can apply to economic inequality.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, with anything that's wrong, it can apply to the environment. Uh, and so, you know, we have so many huge challenges in front of us that I think being vague is maybe, for me, the difference in writing a song that feels that given, you know, depending on what I'm worried about on any given day, because I'm really
Hmm.
good at worrying, it's the same advice. I need the same advice no matter what it is I'm worrying about, unless I'm
Yeah.
doing something very specific and technical.
Yeah.
The
I'm
advice is
curious.
always
I'm
show up.
curious about that. And when I thought of the idea of analyzing a couple songs before we talked with students, it was great that I could look at it with African American studies and then look at it with economics and look at it with government and only ask the question, how would you relate it to things we've discussed in class? And they did a masterful job. So then I went and did a second song, and I loved hearing what they thought of it. And I told them that the reason we're doing this in part is that I think there's a skill in being aware of the things that you listen to, especially the things you subject yourself to repeatedly. And is something that'll guide you towards exploration and understanding and openness. And does it enforce values that you think are important to you? You know, or are you just enjoying the music and the lyrics are secondary, which is sometimes a thing too. When you said that you worry a lot, when I talked to you 12 years ago, I was about to graduate from college and I asked you for advice, you know, and you were driving on the East Coast. You were going from gig to gig and you gave me some great advice. And it was also kind of, you know, just talking through the things you were going through. And I was real worried about having to make a choice. I was working 3 part-time jobs coming out of, you know, the tail end of the housing recession, and college unemployment was horrible. Yeah. And now I'm working 2 full-time jobs. And I just wonder what you worry about. Do you worry about society and big picture stuff? Do you worry about your next decision? Because I've always been someone who's interested in 5 different things and unable to dedicate towards one pathway and one clear, this is who I want to be, and instead feel like I want to feed the different aspects of my personality and have guitars. And I feel like I'm taking a lot of steps in the right direction, but may never get to you know, an ultimate destination. But will be able to then look back and know that I tried many things, and at the end of the day tried to impart good values on the students that I've seen. So what do you worry about? Because what I worry about are just that you know, you only get one go round trying to make this all very meaningful and valuable, and still push my name out to something that my daughters will be proud of. My second daughter comes in April. So, you know, what is it for you?
uh, I've kind of given up on the concept of legacy. I mean, when I'm really, well, I've not given up on it. I'm working at giving up on it.
But when I look at your legacy, and I want you to expand, um, I feel like you have something that I'd be so proud of, like immensely, and not pride in like a bragging way, but I'd be there's so many beautiful creations that you put to life that you've helped me through so many days, and the live streams you did during the years and showing me how you can do them and then give the money to charities and good causes. It's like that's kind of everything I wanted as a kid, is to have enough sway to do something like that. And when I had Ira on from Not a Surf, and he played drums on my first track, Losing Sleep, in the new album, I'm like, oh man, I feel like now that I've talked to Matthew Cause and talked to Ira and talked to Guster, I feel like I've entered in through a distant wave of the world I always wanted to be in, even if my music is never heard by many. But I'm just so proud of you, watching you, man. Like, you've given me so much, and your fans, and you're amazing live, and everything you do is an inspiration. I just want to tell you that, as if that's something you're still thinking about. I know it's never over, but I love what you've done so much.
Thank you. And I don't want to be in any way ungrateful for the platform I had, right? If I didn't have the platform I had, I wouldn't have been able to do the live casts. We wouldn't have been able to raise that much money. We wouldn't have been able to help, Jeremy and his family. Like, it takes a certain number of people showing up, and it took years of work to build that. And I'm really proud of that. I guess sometimes I feel like I'm judged on something I did in my early 20s, and that's all the world wants me to be. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that's also not true. No,
Right.
that's not true.
Yeah.
So, and it's me letting go, I think, of a lot of measures of success that are based on having had this early kind of runaway success. And so, and then, in many ways, doing my best to sabotage the hell out of it. Because it was also not something I was, super comfortable with. And so, I mean, so there's a strange thing happening in that, right? Where I'm trying to think of a good way to describe this. Um, the stuff I'm most interested in now, uh, I'm most interested in like community singing. I've been doing this community choir leading for the last 5 years now, although not so much the last 2 years, because the most antisocial thing you can do is have a bunch of people stand in a circle and spit at each other. So it's been, but it's a very, after doing rock and roll for a long time, this is this music that's, it's almost like church without dogma, right? It's these uplifting, simple, easy to learn songs. Uh, and you can basically learn and sing a song in about 10 minutes. And there's nothing young and sexy about it. Um, and it's music without performance. So also the purpose of it, you need somebody who can kind of be the choir leader, who can hold the rhythm and hold the pitch and keep people together, because it's designed for uh, any voice and any musical level to join in. And so there are a lot of people who come who, like, they went to church when they were a kid, they loved singing, and they were told to shut up and that they didn't have a good voice. Or
I'll raise my
sometimes,
hand on that one.
or sometimes they fell out with their religion that they were raised in, and they felt like they couldn't sing in that same way, where it was, you know, and I think there's a union that happens at a regular concert, but there's something particularly beautiful when there's no audience. And it's the secret that musicians have when you're all just sitting in a room and playing for each other and riffing off each other and feeding off each other's energy. And it's the same thing that happens in church choirs, right? So um, I had about 15 years where I was like, how can you make non-performative music? Like, how would you construct it? And what would it be like? And then I found out there was this thriving scene already happening all over the world of people doing this kind of music. Um, and it raises interesting questions about, and pretty vital questions, I think, about cultural appropriation. Which songs are okay to sing? Which songs are not okay to sing? I, uh, I haven't, I don't sing any Native American songs, no Chumash songs, no Lakota songs. I don't have permission for those, and I don't. And I feel like, as the inhabitor of Chumash land, taking their songs in my circle, uh, I've sung a couple of spirituals, and I've talked about where they came from. But even
Hmm.
spirituals, I stand back on, because it's also another heritage where I have a lot to look at as far as my ancestors go.
Yeah.
And so, and it's easy to, you can pick and choose, I mean, and you also have to ask which cultures are more open, singing Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, right? May all beings be happy and free. Uh, it's a beautiful Sanskrit thing. I feel, for the most part, that culture feels that more blessings is more blessings. Like, you go,
And
you're
it's
all.
maybe like made to travel, like intended to travel more in a way, perhaps.
Some things are, or Thich Nhat Hanh, or so, things that have been said. And so there's this question of honoring your source material, or
Hmm.
even songs to the goddess Oshun, the Orisha, right? Who's an Aruban, from Nigeria, and she's the youngest of the gods of the Orishas. She's the goddess of, like, flowing fresh water. She's the one that brought life and made the world sweet, and she's about fecundity and generosity. And so, there's one song, we sing to her. So it's a little bit of the smorgasbord of, some of it's straight out spiritual, some of it's just ridiculous. There's one song called Chips that's just, the chips at the bottom of the bag are the saltiest. Things are much more salty at the bottom of the bag. Uh, and, you know, some of them are just silly. There's a song
Uh-huh.
called Howard about a discarded alligator in the sewers. And, and some of them very non-denominational. There's a Michael Stillwater song called One by One, and it's this beautiful round, and it's just, one by one, everyone comes to remember we're healing the world one heart at a time. And so, I mean, for a lot of people, and it's been interesting to see the people who come into these circles, because I've had musicians come in, and some of them go like, I kind of wanted something more difficult and interesting, and this is a little bright for my tastes. So see you later. And I've had other people come in and hear it once and go like, "Oh, I've been looking for this my entire life. I think I'm going to start song leading," and that's my
Awesome.
favorite response. So, like, my goal for the next few years, once touring is regular and once we're able to sing together, the thing I'm most interested in doing, instead of like trying to write a hit, trying to have a career, is like, I want to spread community singing around,
Oh,
and
cool.
just lead little workshops and kind of alternate it with my solo shows, and introduce people to it and give them a few resources to research it. And the hope is that any town I go to, there's at least one person who's going to start doing this work.
Wow.
And that's the kind of project that makes me excited these days.
Hmm.
Um, and once again, it's such a simple thing to sing together. And it's at the core of every society that has ever existed until now, until very recently. And even if you travel around, you go to Europe and you go to a pub in Germany, you go to a
Sure.
pub anywhere around the world, people will start singing a song and everybody will join in.
Yeah.
And here, I mean, we can do it with Sweet Caroline and a few others, but we don't necessarily have our regional songs. We don't have, we've lost a little bit of this idea of non-performative music, of working songs, and even songs to sing to ourselves as we are, um, you know, working through grief, working through change, working through all these other things.
Right.
There's a whole other subset of this that is the other thing I'm most interested in, which is grief ceremony, which is, which I guess I should just say, I'm kind of a hippie. And once again, grief ceremony is, it was, it's basically there's some of it that is discussion, but it's mostly a somatic experience. It's singing like a 45-second song for 4 to 5 hours, drumming and singing a room full of people. And then when people are kind of taken and need to weep, they go to the altar and they wail and they cry for as long as they need to.
Wow.
Then they come back and keep singing. And so nobody gets to take all the attention. No wailing is too loud. Everybody is supported, and nobody has to go into a long explanation of why or where it came from or what it's about. All of it's welcome, and none of it's better or less. It's, no person's grief is invalid.
Right.
But and it's also it's kind of constructed once again so that it doesn't become a pity party. And honestly, one of my favorite things, like, it's amazing how invigorating it is to sing a song until you are ground down. And there's something once again about having ceremonies that take a long time and aren't easy and simple. It's not going to a therapist for 1 hour and cramming as much as you can and then having, sorry, we're out of time. If you've ever sat in a sweat lodge, or if you've ever done things that take longer and actually require a serious effort and discomfort,
Yeah.
uh, they take you to different places than easy things do. And so I feel like the song circles are comfortable and sweet and wonderful. And once again, there are some younger people. It's a lot of people my age or older, um, and I don't know. So these are the things that I'm like most excited about, and I'm doing more touring, but basically at this point I do Toad so I can afford to do stuff like that. I love
Makes
doing Toad too. I'm also gonna say we're getting along better than ever. It's so fun to make new music. It's you know, but yeah. I love it.
that sounds interesting. And the way you said that people are unaware of it in many pockets, I never heard of it, never encountered that. And that sounds like a real experience for someone
Yeah.
that's not seen something like that before.
And it's beautiful. Once again, it can be very bright. Uh, and I made an effort when I started leading mine to make it um, to kind of de-emphasize maybe the more potentially, I hate saying hippie, but like to de-emphasize those elements, because I have my own comfortability with them, but I also know people have different triggers, right? And if your spiritual language is too overt or too bright,
Sure.
that triggers people. If you talk, uh, knowing there's going to be people who have a religion, there's also going to be people who were really damaged by religion. And
Sure.
so, how do you deal with spirituality, in a way that's inclusive and uplifting, but yeah, not pushing anybody out.
I think that's an important approach to interfacing with people. I never know what backgrounds my students come from when they enter a classroom. They're seniors for the most part. And, I went through 13 years of Catholic school and then found my best religion teacher was a Jewish rabbi at Dominican University in San Rafael, who's took Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, put them side by side, showed us all the times when people got together, agreed how much is in common, how much is shared, then taught us 30 other faiths and showed us the golden rule in 54 different texts. And then I thought, well, then everyone's got good ideas if they can follow them to a happy life. That seems awesome. Why wasn't I taught that growing up? That seems like the place to start.
Really like to be right, and they really like to be special.
Yeah. Um,
Which isn't to say that, like, that it's not worthwhile building talent or a capability, or that's important stuff, but um the wanting to be seen, and it's an interesting part about the world I found myself in with rock and roll, right? Where um I knew at 16 I loved the theater, I loved music, I loved the arts. And my when I was a freshman, so actually it would have been like 14, yeah, 14, 15, 15. Uh, it was my theater teacher's first year in teaching high school as a full time teacher, and he said, why am I teaching here? Because I got a theater degree. I love the theater more than anything else, and I didn't want to spend my entire life selling myself.
Yeah.
And all my friends were going to New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, um, and he said basically like he just wanted to keep his love for the theater. Uh, he didn't want to have it complicated, and he actually didn't feel like he had the thick skin to keep pushing in that way that you have to get forward. And
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I went like, "Yes, I'm going to be a high school teacher."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my plan, when I was 18, we'd made the first two Toad the Wet Sprocket records already,
Uh-huh.
and I was accepted at San Francisco State.
Mhm.
I wanted to live in the city, which was why I went to the state school, and I was going to study. Um, I was into social sciences, theater, music, and education. And I would like my plan was to go and come out and teach high school and be able to be like enthused and creative and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
inspirational, but never have to have the heartache of like bad reviews or the public like the awkwardness of putting something out there in the world. I was like, that'll wreck me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
kind of right. Like it was really, really difficult to be that exposed and to feel like I didn't belong in that world. And it's taken me a really long time, and parts of me are still kind of unspooling it. And I think we're conditioned to believe that like fame and notoriety are the answer. And once again, that idea of like, what to achieve. I
And a
met a
finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a finish line, and somehow you're graded, and there's a scorecard.
Yeah.
And there's no grading except the state of your own mind.
Right.
And, uh, you know, and a friend of mine, Skylar, was telling me, I wish I could remember the name of his favorite, like, spiritual meditation teacher. And he was saying, yeah, it's this guy in India. Um, he owned a few tobacco shops. Then he just started becoming really fascinated with his interior state and spent more and more time meditating and looking into his mind, sold all his shops except one, lived above the shop and meditated. And a few people like found him and asked him some questions. He never sold anything. He never started a school. He never became a guru. Um, but people recorded conversations with him and wrote them down.
Cool.
And I was talking to my partner, my girlfriend about this, and she was saying, I think probably the best spiritual teachers of all history went that route and we'll never know what they said.
Yeah. Right. Because they weren't seeking that. It wasn't
Yeah.
to find an audience. It was to
Yeah.
find something in themselves. And other people also found what they were finding pretty interesting.
Which is not to say that the big gurus don't sometimes have some great pieces of wisdom,
Sure.
but they also to be looked at with a little bit of healthy skepticism,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
They, how many church leaders, gurus, politicians, huge figures have had, terrible scandals because they're human beings. And partially because they're human beings, and partially because there's some of that ego that jettisons them into the public eye and to needing to be the big guru and needing to
Right.
act like they figured it all out, uh, is coming perhaps from a place that's not really completely whole.
And I wondered if the same thing that a lot of people, what they're looking for, I'd like to, I love when I get a letter from someone who's really enjoyed a song or a YouTube comment. And that means a lot. I like that I was able to build this room where I can come and write freely. And if I put an album out every year, and it sells a little, and I can play songs for people publicly when I do gigs. And if the audience doesn't know the songs ahead of time, that's okay. I still get to communicate it. I still get to try to win them over in the midst of a song and a moment and a feeling, and that's great. And then a few followers tick up, but I don't live by that count. I don't need to seek out that kind of fame. I'd worry that I'd compromise what I have, which is the ability to sleep well at night. I feel spiritually full. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And I get to talk to you now with, you mentioned the downside of technology. In the 90s, if I wanted to reach out to you or Not a Surf or the Gin Blossoms or Guster, there was no mechanism for that. It was near impossible, right? I got spotted at a Gin Blossoms concert once and taken backstage. And that was the first time I realized that, there were people in these groups that have thoughts, and that I could reach out to them and have interviews. And I think that's brilliant. And I wonder if that kind of world would have ripped me apart too, because I didn't smoke, didn't drink, had limited experiences or whatever. But I'm glad that I get the tools to create and write music, and then I've got a nice collection of instruments growing, and I've got a nice collection of songs growing. The only thing that I worry is that we're also taught a bit of like, hey, no risk, no reward. And maybe the reason I haven't found wider audiences because I haven't gone all in with it. But then I wondered what I'd be losing, that I have so much, and that maybe that's a false thought, that I need to put myself into a vulnerable or risky position to give it the all. I went through radio for 5 years, had a great time at AM 830 in Anaheim with the Angels. It was on the morning show. Nobody got promoted. Nobody got a raise. Didn't seem like a good career. Didn't seem like a healthy choice. Didn't seem like a healthy path. Sure, Will Ferrell just came in and Chris Rock's coming this afternoon, but that's not who I wanted to be. So I don't know. That's all. I'm searching for, I guess, a little bit more in every direction, and trying to, maybe, as you said, just be more content with how much is going well.
2 kids on the way.
Yeah, one's 5 and a baby coming in April. Yeah.
And I mean, that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of the reason I survived as well as I did, given my proclivity for depression and anxiety, was my family. I got to raise 3 kids. I started having kids, got married at 23, started having kids at 25. My girls are amazing. And, 26, 25, and 20 now. And I consider them to be signs of a life well lived. um, and, and my partner, the home I have now, the life I'm living right now is like that. You gauge yourself, I think, ultimately, like by the people closest to you. It's like, who are your friends? Who did you choose and who chose you?
Mm-hmm.
And, uh, and you know, it's things like that. It's a strange era. I mean, I think one of the weird things about how it used to be with rock is because there were so few avenues, right? You could play covers in a local band. You could do certain genres of music and um, travel around and play gigs as like a regional band, right? Especially
Yeah.
if it was really danceable. And there were also, scenes with regional metal. There were scenes with regional punk. They weren't like big. You couldn't make a great living, but you could make a living. And even with metal, you could sometimes make a great living being regional. So all these worlds and notches. But in terms of like radio, rock, like you had to be almost entirely on a major label. Had to be young enough and unattached enough that you could tour like crazy. Um, and so it was this kind of dream thing that didn't happen to very many people. And I think right now, it's still a dream thing that doesn't happen to many people.
Mhm.
And right now, the things that are, rewarded are being really good at social media, being really good at having your follows, having your likes, maintaining social media, doing all these things.
Yeah.
Those are jobs I am terrible at and resent.
Mhm.
I can't keep anything constant. The only time I can be constantly doing something on social media is if the underlying material is more important than I am, right? Meaning, in the same way, like my former wife, she started the Santa Barbara Midwifery Clinic, and she'd never spoken publicly before. And when she started speaking, she was an amazing speaker because she didn't talk about how I'm starting this thing because of my practice. And when I first went, she started this thing because she said Santa Barbara has needed this for this many years.
Mhm.
The importance of this to women, the importance of this for their children, and she's and so even when I was doing the live casts, it was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this year. Hey, there's a donate button on Facebook. I can do I want to do something worthwhile. I can support some charities. I can try to do something good. And then it became also the nurturing of this community. It became
Yeah.
18 months of like, I'm doing this 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And this is where these people talk to their friends. I can't flake because it's not about me. and and so that made it easy to do that. But I feel like right now, and like my partner, she teaches eighth grade English. She also teaches yoga, and she hates being photographed. She does not do any social media. She
Mhm.
refuses to have an Instagram page, and she is constantly being told by the studio she works at, it's like, hey, got to do your social media, and other people saying, hey, you should, to get ahead as a teacher. And she simply refuses, and I love her for it.
Yeah.
Her classes are full because she's a really damn good teacher. She knows what she's doing, and um, she's willing to stick it out and not have to fit in this constant seeming that everybody does now. And it's such a, I feel like on the one hand, it's a great opportunity for artists to have all these tools. And on the other hand, it's a terrible trap because those who are proficient in it and good at it, some of those are also really good artists. And those are people are doing very well right now. Right. Um, and there are also great artists like Neutral Milk Hotel who they were so nervous they couldn't stand being indie darlings and they broke up and they disappeared for something like 20 years. He couldn't handle talking to people after shows. He couldn't handle doing interviews. He couldn't handle any of the attention and he went completely underground. And they're brilliant. They're so good. And so I think of those people who have these really tender hearts who make really wonderful music. And there's people like, Daniel Johnson, who was lucky enough to just kind of be discovered in his own wild corner of the world.
Mhm.
Or, even going back further, Harry Nilsson, who never toured, right? He was hanging out with the Beatles. He wrote, Can't live if living is without you. He was huge, scared to death of touring. Nick Drake, not super popular when he was alive, got placed, Pink Moon or whatever it is, was in a bunch of. He started getting famous after
Mhm.
years after he passed away, and and the important part is the work, and the
Yeah.
important part is the life, and it's not the likes, it's not the follows, and I guess for me it's like that idea of jumping, and I battle this with myself, like should I be better at social media? Should I try to do well at this thing? And there's a degree to which I should get better at it simply because it is the medium by which things are promoted these days. Uh, and it's the day job, right? It's
Yeah.
the
It's the
day job.
business. Hmm.
But that business is so engaged in a system that trains people towards a narcissistic
Yeah.
point of view that whatever I do into that world, I am having to gauge very, very consciously as being a danger zone. It's why even with, I doing a live cast tomorrow, uh, I have done shows through pay to play services,
Hmm.
um, and stage it, and they work very well. But they're made to gin up tips. They're
Yeah.
made to like you see who the top tipper is, and it's gamified. And I prefer going to Facebook and just saying, not doing stars, not doing ads, like refusing anything that is commercializing it or get in the way of it being a direct experience. And then simply saying, tip me if you want, and
Yep.
not putting a price on it.
And one click the play button and it's happening. You're witnessing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want ads. I don't want stars. I don't want like that's just me. And I think I found my way in social media by refusing to do the things in social media or trying to do them and doing them badly and then quitting them. But
Yeah.
really trying to refuse to do the things that just don't feel right to me.
And that would then, if you were doing them, require people to spend even more time engaging with those materials. I deleted my Facebook and I'm on Instagram only to promote the local shows at the wineries and clubs that I book. And I'm happy to do that for them. They're goodly enough to have me and host me. They're running nice establishments. And that's really all you'll find is photos of that,
And Facebook is
is
more evil than not, right?
sure.
Yeah, it's caused such divisiveness, misinformation.
Echo chambers and all of it. Yeah,
It, been so terrible for people. It's also done a lot of good,
sure.
and it can do good. Unfortunately, it's like one of my conundrums is that's where my audience is now. And my audience is in a place that I don't want to go. And I don't go there unless I'm playing. And even, for the most part, I'll check in now. I use a service called Restream so that I don't have to look at
It just pushes it there. Yeah.
media.
I'll usually pick it up on Twitter. So I'm not on Facebook anymore. And I'll see it there and click it there.
So it's one of those strange, I don't know what I'm saying in all of this, except I guess if there's a question of, yeah, what do you do with your life? Um, I look at my own life, and the thing I've been wrestling with is, the increased cost of living in coastal California. I was, divorced, don't own a house. This feeling like I gotta own a house or I'm not a man. This, fear of getting kicked out or not being able to, um, worrying about the environment, worrying about the government, worrying about all these things that could blow up. Um, and the big shift that I've gone through in the last number of months has been not to ignore the potential of all those things because, it's happening. The environment, it's like stuff's happening, but to spend much, much more of my attention on appreciating what's in front of me and, um, and realizing if I have dreams of, uh, I want to make an album that's so brilliant that everybody will have to respect me again, and then I'll get on there, and then I kind of go, well, and then what? What's the end goal of that?
Mhm.
Because that's never enough. Having a gold record was not enough. Then the record company starts going, we need to get you platinum. Why is that other band platinum? And then you're platinum, and we got from they had a Columbia. Well, yeah, but Gin Blossoms were 5 times platinum. You guys
Yeah.
went one platinum.
Yeah.
What the hell? Why didn't you work?
Huh.
You need to be bigger. You need to try harder. You need to want it more.
Phew.
It's never, ever, ever enough.
Yeah.
And and when you get that it's never, ever enough, you can finally stop torturing yourself with it
Yeah.
and get back to doing the stuff that feels good.
And then
And
maybe
then
that's
stuff
the advice.
will emerge.
Maybe that's the advice for students who are getting ready to graduate too, is you find the thing that is your work that you're proud of because it's the work and not where the work takes you. Like when I know that I couldn't live off of my music, but when I look at a set list for a 2 or 3 hour gig and I look at the titles that I've written, it makes me really happy. Like when I know that I'm going to kick into that song next, or it's Careless in My Sleep, or Thinnest Moon, or Return, I'm really happy because I hear elements of all the people I admire and respect channeled in something that I made. And
Yeah.
whether or not that it sustains my income, I was able to do that and create it. And the pile of music will live for whoever will find it.
And even the life you want to live. I mean, I know people who have tens of millions of dollars
Hmm.
and are not very happy.
Sure.
And I also like great conversation with a guy who was taking a break outside of Trader Joe's. And it's like, yeah, so you work here? He's like, yeah, I love it. This is the best job because it like people are always happy to see me. I'm a writer and I'm a surfer and I can write and surf and I don't have to take my job home with me and
Yeah.
it's enough to live on. And and my mind is free enough during the day that I feel like I'm always writing and always creating.
Cool.
And it was like that sounds like a really damn good life.
Yes.
Like we don't that's the thing. Like we there's such a worship of people like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or you know like and it takes I mean damn it takes brains, it takes hard work, I get it, and it takes privilege, which is the part that people usually leave out of that, but it takes brains and it takes hard work.
Yeah.
um, and if you don't have the privilege it takes extra hard work, right?
Yes.
uh,
Hmm.
and so I don't know. As the goal, like, I think most people just want enough and want dignity and want to have friends they can count on. And no amount of money or success will get you friends you can count on. Like, all that can do that is character.
Right.
And, you're going to have to edit this so
Oh
heavily.
no, it's gonna be great. And I'll wrap soon. But I want to be respectful. I don't want to stop you either because I think that's the advice for the seniors is to define your own end zone, to define your own touchdown, not what everyone else needs it to be. What can you do? Be content with, be creative in what you do, and be satisfied with your day to day.
And this, like, if you're talking to your economics students, right, you can make a spreadsheet out of anything, right? You can
Mhm.
say this matters, this matters, this matters, this matters. One of the biggest difficulties for me anytime I release an album is sales have always been this metric.
Yeah.
Radio play has always been this metric. Spotify play. I have terrible Spotify numbers. Like for someone who tours at the level I tour at, nobody listens to me on Spotify. And so it's fascinating to me. Like I can look at these numbers and
Yeah.
I can get frustrated about them, or I can look at, what was our total press imprints for the Toad record because we put it out, and as soon as you put it out, you start getting reports, you start getting spreadsheets that say this is what is valuable. And the stuff that says this is what is valuable does not include, emails from people about, let's say, transient whales or
Love
about,
that song.
uh, you know, like, hey, I was just going through this period of my life and this song like really helped me. It doesn't include any of those.
Right.
Include the people who never wrote the letters who were affected by it. It doesn't include the number of times people were brought to tears by the songs. And like for me, like now live, it's not how many are in the room. It's like if I can make somebody in the front ugly cry, I feel really good. That's something.
That's awesome. That's
And
awesome.
so all of these things and careers, they go up and they down. So when you're looking at your life and how you're defining success, you have to ask really carefully, are you taking false metrics from somebody else's description of what a successful life is? Are
Right.
you applying those to yourself? Do those numbers in any way actually relate to anything you care about? And in your own metric, in your own rubric, are you including things that actually don't matter? Are you including things that if you looked at them harder are asking you real questions about what you're valuing? If it is about being seen, if it is about stuff that's external to you, um, and I know people, especially if you grow up with no money, I know people who like step number one was security, right? Step number one is not being in want again. And I didn't grow up wanting, so I don't know what that feeling is like. But I know people who became very successful, and then when they kind of got the ground under their feet that way, some people just nothing's ever enough, and they find out no matter how much they have, they don't feel secure. Some people get to a point where they go, okay, I'm good. Now I want to give back, right? And
Right.
like if I can make somebody in the front ugly cry, I feel really good. That's something.
That's awesome. That's
And
awesome.
person like I have another friend right now, and her work right now, she's doing all this crypto stuff and land, and she's working very, very hard to become wealthy. Specifically, she's already saved um, something like 200 acres from development. And her entire life's goal is to save as much undeveloped land in California as possible to prevent it,
Tremendous.
to keep it natural, to save it for the animals and the plants, and unbroken large swaths of land. Because if the government's not going to do any more national forests, and if the national forests are in danger, she's going to make her own damn national forest, and that's why she's becoming filthy rich. And so I know people who have done these things, but if the idea is you get rich and then you're indestructible, or you get rich and then I don't know, you're a douchebag, like it's 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 not it's not a great look. So I mean,
No.
looking at even your own, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it to give back? Are you doing it out of heart?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
doing it to satisfy some part of your ego that might not ever be satisfied? And
Yeah. I like all those exploratory questions, and I'm grateful that you offered them to consider. I think that's huge, man. I think that's huge. I think that's a lot of why I enjoy the teaching bit. Whatever little bits of knowledge I have, learnings that I've had from decisions and choices that I can offer you to boost you up and put you a little further ahead from where I was at your age, and tell you to guide it with kindness, and look for things like Team C's and things that are looking to make a difference in a positive way, and be a part of it. Don't wait, start now. I love all of that, Glenn. I'm really grateful for those words, and I'll share those with my students as well. And you've been really generous with your time. I want to offer you, while you're up in the Bay this April, if you want to come and record a song, hang out, have a meal, please, you're more than welcome. And it just would mean the world to me to sit down with you at some point with guitars and sing some songs. And just wanted to say thank you for all the good examples that you give for us, the time that you share, the things you do for the people who find your music meaningful, and the way you've gone about it. Because it's great for me, as I shared to the people who follow me and will watch this on my channel as well. I want to respect and support people who are respectful and who are supportive of good things in the world. And I think you embody a lot of what I look for is kind of a leader, and somebody who's wise, and not to mention, just I think one of the best pure songwriters there are going today. And just so much respect and love for you, man. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. Take care.